All right, hello and welcome to our Discovery Wednesday class with Guy. My name is Kate. Welcome to everyone in the room and welcome to all of you online. Glad you tuned in to join us tonight. And just if you haven't joined us here before, the format for tonight is that in just a moment, Guy will come on and give about an hour-long talk. We'll take a quick 5-minute break and then we'll come back for a Q&A open discussion time with all of you. Everyone in the room and everyone online, you can participate, and I'll tell you more about that later in the broadcast. For you in the room, if you brought in a cell phone, if you could please check and make sure that it's off or in silent mode. And online, if you have any tech, you can reach out to me in the question area of GoToWebinar or the chat area of Facebook or YouTube. You can email support@guyfinley.org, and I'll be happy to help. I think we're ready to get started, so I'm going to start by reading our topic and key lesson, the first key lesson for tonight, and then I'll hand it over to Guy. Our topic tonight is take the first step out of and away from runaway reactions. Here's the key lesson. The consistency of any painful negative reaction to some person or event doesn't prove, as we imagine it does, that the guilty party remains unchanged as charged. Rather, what it does show, at the very least, is that it is we who are unchanged, an unwitting captive of being unconsciously identified with our own negative reaction. All right, Guy, I'll hand it to you.
Boo. Not quite time for Halloween, but it does look like a kind of a trick-or-treat group. Welcome everyone in the room and of course, wherever you are in the world joining us today or this evening, this morning, whatever time it is, I'm glad you're here. We're going to take a very deep and deliberate look at something as we do on Wednesday evenings when I involve the group and you who are joining us. I'm going to take a very deep look at something that honestly should have long ago been of tremendous interest to you as an aspirant. Because while I'm not going to name it yet, our lives are dominated, and that's an accurate word, dominated by the reactions that we have time and time again on a daily basis, dominated by them. The problem is you don't know that you're dominated by them. That's the problem. And that's what we're going to look at and understand, God willing, so thoroughly that by the time we're done with the material I intend to cover with you today, this evening, there should be at the very least a consistent, constant, living doubt that comes into you and over you every time that you have a negative reaction. Not the certainty that you have now. Your reactions come with certainty. So to set this up properly, I've kind of laid out a quiz, a couple questions to help us get our mind all on the same track like I like to do when we have our Wednesday nights. And I might add, as best you can, you don't really understand the importance of being able to pay attention. How you literally could miss one thing and it might take 10 years for the conditions to come back around again for you to become conscious of that. And that's not an exaggeration. That's if it comes back around again. So, do I have your attention at least for a moment? In virtually every unwanted moment when life seems to challenge some desire of ours, there always appears a certain dark character that each time it appears and we are in its presence, we're quite sure that we want nothing to do with it. And then we struggle to free ourselves from the suffering that it brings with it. Name that character. In virtually every unwanted moment when life seems to challenge some desire of ours, something we're identified with, a certain character, a certain kind of conflict appears each time. And when it does, we swear we don't want it, and then we spend the remainder of that day and perhaps a lifetime struggling to free ourselves from the suffering that was innate in it. What would that character be? Anybody want to venture a guess? No guesses here, and I won't leave it open to the group yet. It's really phenomenal that we spend as much time as we do in the hands of a particular unconscious reaction, our life ruled by its appearance and no awareness of that at all. The character that always appears in every unwanted moment, that born of something that challenges our desire and that we say we don't want and we try to get rid of it. Resistance. Resistance is the blood of the false self. It is the blood of the false self. It is what keeps it alive. The illusion of it, I might add. And when that resistance comes up, next question, since you did so well with the first one. When that resistance comes up, what's always born in the onset of that initial resistance? What's always born of it, like mosquitoes out of a stagnant pond? What's always born of it?
Insistence.
What? Insistence. Negative reactions. There's never been a moment of some form of resistance to a person, a place, a condition in your life that at its outset you had no idea what that resistance was. It just comes up. It's there before the I that claims it. Before the sense of self knows why I'm in this bad place, I'm in the place where something's going no. So it's a no without an I. But no can stand without an I, and the way in which that I becomes erect is through the negative reactions that follow that resistance. Can you see that at all? And if you can't, let me ask you another question before we make our list. What would you say has been with you every single time that you weren't aware of in the moment of it being with you, that because it was with you, it always gave you some action to take based on the reaction you had? So there's always something telling you to do something. And every time something tells you to do something, followed by, or I should say preceded by that negative reaction. Has there ever been anything but self-compromise? Have you ever been anything but self-compromised by the action taken by the reaction that you had? Do you understand a reaction gives you an action, yes or no? A reaction gives you an action. How many times have you taken an action based on a reaction and then find out, that was really the wrong action to take? Yes or no? Now, isn't it amazing that my whole life I consistently have this summary resistance to any unwanted moment? And the minute that resistance is there, it is accompanied by an upwelling of some form of negative reaction or a legion of them. And every one of those negative reactions is always saying, look there, this is like that. Look at this, what are you going to do? Now what happens? And out of its conclusion comes an action to take that no matter how many times I've taken that action to rescue myself from that resistance, from the pain of that resistance, I'm still doing nothing but making lazy circles in the sky? Yes or no? So what we're going to do, and I really want to stress this, I'm going to share some very important ideas with you. I'm actually beginning to lead up to our December talks here. And I'm going to drop little bits and pieces into the various talks so that you're more prepared when I start presenting this brand new material that I intend to give you in December. Name, let's bring up the list if we can, please. Name one of your most familiar negative reactions that you struggle with on a somewhat predictable, if not daily basis. Name one of, to start, your most familiar negative reactions that you struggle with on a predictable, if not daily basis. I'll give you a few examples. I like to prime the pump. How many of you, in one form or another, experience some kind of painful insistence on a daily basis? Yes or no? Impatience is definitely a negative reaction, isn't it? How many of you summarily judge, if not people, some moments that you find yourself not wanting? Isn't resistance in itself a summary judgment? Judge not that ye be not judged. The minute that resistance is there, I have done the one thing that judges me that I don't know I'm doing. Think of it. So any form of judgment that occurs in that moment is definitively one of these negative reactions that seems to be born of that resistance, when resistance is itself judgment. How can I resist something without knowing what it is? And how can I know what something is without comparison? So how can I compare any given moment to what's taking place unless in that moment something that lives in me in the past, something I've identified with, comes up and it goes, no, not that. And it judges it as if somehow or other what I'm resisting is other than the thing being resisted. As if what I'm resisting is other than the moment being resisted, and it is not. If resistance is judgment, it is a singular movement. Please, do you see that with me? I'll give you one more. How many of you feel occasionally, I'm using that euphemistically, the sudden need to protect yourself from someone that you think is being disrespectful? Anybody here? Now, why in the world would a man or a woman suddenly have a negative reaction because they think, have you ever seen a couple people talking in the corner of the room and somebody goes, they're talking about me? Because one of them was looking in your direction and kind of snickering, and that really made it worse. But they were talking about some stupid joke from 42 years ago. It had nothing to do with you. How can I have a negative reaction like that unless something in me fears being seen in a negative light by people around me? So that resistance is at play again, isn't it? And don't you judge anybody that you think is negatively judging you. Okay, now the room is open to you and to the group out here. I want to know, name one of your most familiar negative reactions that you struggle with on a somewhat predictable, if not daily basis. Patricia.
The political news.
Well, you don't struggle with the news. You struggle to your negativity when you hear the news. You have negative reactions to the news. Terry. I struggle with resentment. If not daily, then certainly on a certain basis. Doug.
You shouldn't be that way.
I struggle with the idiocy of other people, right? It's really another form of judgment, isn't it? I struggle with judging others. Chica. Wrestling? I know, I heard you. She said rushing. That's a big one. Inwardly, I'm always on fire, anxious about something, and rushing to get rid of. When I'm rushing, Chica, what am I rushing to get rid of?
The thing that I don't want.
She said, the thing that I don't want. No, that's not what you're rushing to get rid of. You're rushing to get rid of the pain of your own rushing. Isn't that what you're rushing for? I'm rushing because if I get there, I won't have this pain. So I'm actually rushing to escape my own reaction. Can you outrun your own reaction, Chica? She says, no, but I'm going to try again and again and again. And why do I try again and again and again? I'm staying on track. I'm going to get onto my list here. Why do I keep trying? Hold that question. I'm going to explain that. Don't you think it's a phenomenon? Let's say, how many of you suspect there are certain reactions that you keep having time and time again, and that you keep saying, you know, I get it. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't rush. I shouldn't be anxious. I shouldn't judge. I shouldn't be. How many, if you had that, yes or no? So I want to ask you a question. When you were a kid, did you ever burn your hand in a candle? How many times did you have to do that? Anybody? Well, if you did it more than 2 times, you need special help. Let's put it that way. Why do I know? I don't have to start taking classes on how not to burn my hand in a candle. I don't need a guru. I don't need any religion. I don't need any of those things to tell me, don't hurt yourself. Because the minute it's evident that that hurts, that's the same moment that I start being awake to the conditions that come up when I'm around a candle. Why aren't I aware of conditions in those moments that produce this burning called resentment, resistance, and negative reactions? Do you understand? That proves that we don't see. That proves that we're not there. That's what this talk is about. Barbara.
Self-doubt.
One of my negative reactions is constant self-doubt. Always talking to myself. David.
Fright.
Fright?
Yeah.
Fright.
Like being.
I'm scared. Yeah, fright. Trick or treat, trick or treat. I'm fearful. Is that hard to say? I'm afraid. Say it.
I'm afraid.
Yeah, can you say it without identifying? On the board, I struggle with impulses, obviously negative impulses, like an addiction. Carl, complaining. How many of you struggle with not wanting to complain, but find yourself the unwilling participant in that process? I was thinking on the way down here, what a beautiful world it would be if people either changed what they don't like or gave it up, but either way, stopped complaining about it. Sweet Mother of God, when are you going to stop complaining about this world and change yourself, because you are the world that you complain about? You always have something bothering you. Why do I always have something bothering me? How many of you always have, but this is what we're talking about. How many of you always have something bothering you? Yes or no? Why? I'll tell you why. I love it. I do. I love it, but I say I hate it. I love it, but I say I can't stand it. Would you like to get to the bottom of that? That's what we're going to do, okay? On the board, gossiping, Namita, hesitation, that's a negative reaction. Steve, accepting other points of view that I judge instantly. Susanna, I struggle with people not getting to the point quickly, wasting my time. In the room, anybody, please. Ellen.
Frustration.
I'm fairly frustrated most of the time. A negative, is not frustration a negative reaction? Yes or no? I struggle with frustration. Anybody else, please? Chris.
Anyone does something other than what I want.
I struggle with people not recognizing that I'm God, and I get negative when they don't see me the way that I want to be seen, and then demand that I'm seen. Anybody else? Deb.
Feeling like a victim.
I struggle with feeling like I'm a victim. I have a negative reaction. Now, we're talking about struggle. Remember, I'm talking about negative reactions, so I'd like you to use your minds a little more sharply. You're giving what you struggle with. What's the negative reaction when I feel like a victim? What's that negative reaction? What is it? Defensiveness, isn't it? That's a negative reaction, on the defensive, just like that. And why am I on the defensive? Because one way or the other, you don't understand my position and you're pushing or otherwise prodding, therefore I'm a victim of your aggression. Am I a victim of your aggression when I have this negative reaction? Am I a victim of your aggression, or am I a victim of a consciousness that only knows how to respond to that moment with resistance and the negative reaction? Do you understand? Anybody else before we go on the board? Gino says, yeah, why me? So the negative reaction isn't why me, the negative reaction is whining. I whine. How many of you whine? And not at a vineyard either. Rationalizing, disbelief over what just happened. All right, we get the point here. Anybody bring up anything that any one of us haven't? Leah?
Defensiveness.
Well, we just covered that, didn't we? Yeah, being defensive as a negative reaction. Now, please, we outlined 20 or 30 of these negative reactions, right? And we've all had them rather regularly. Have any one of those negative reactions, any one of them, ever resolved the condition that they point to and blame for their appearance? No. Has anyone, yes or no? Well, see, I don't understand. I'm playing stupid. I don't understand. That's sarcastic. If not one of those negative reactions has ever brought an end to the condition that it's complaining about, then why do you keep doing something that does nothing? Doug said, because no one has done la casa. Because in one respect, no one is there, but we're going to get a little sharper than that. We're going to give ourselves something real to work with. If in fact these reactions are futile, why are we so quick to identify with them? Because isn't that what we're talking about, is identifying with these negative reactions? Why are we so quick to identify with something and then do what they bid when we do their bidding, it is us that gets undone, and not only undone, but it changes nothing about the consciousness responsible for it. Why is that? Anybody want to venture a guess?
Because there's not enough light in us.
Not enough light in us. No. No, look, listen, you have to be in your work someone who is gradually, because you can't do it all at once, gradually ruthless with the emptiness of your own conclusions. Ruthless with the emptiness, with the futility of your own set answers. Because that's what teachings do to people. That's what all of the mechanical religion and so-called spirituality corrupts the soul by giving an unconscious nature a bevy of familiar answers that seem to reconcile the condition but do nothing whatsoever to shine light on the consciousness responsible for its repetition. You must become ruthless with that. And it will come naturally to you because of the light that will reveal to you. You know what? I'm saying the same thing again. And then I judge myself for not having the light. As if somehow or other the negative reaction to not being full of light proves that I am full of light. You're full of something, but it's not light. Why? What is this that keeps going on? Now you have to pay extra close attention, okay? And I really mean that. Come wide awake. Why does that keep going on? I'm going to lay it out for you, but it's not easy to understand. I know it isn't. We don't have interior eyes yet, but just follow. Have we not in the past seen time and time again a particular idea, which is this, that resistance is in fact a form of negative identification? That resistance is a form of negative identification. What does that mean, briefly? That resistance is a form of negative identification. It means that when I'm resisting a condition, all of my attention is on the condition I'm resisting. So I'm fully identified with the thing, believing that not wanting it proves that I don't want it. But if I don't want it, why am I giving all of my attention to it? Follow me? Pretty straightforward. I think that was a good, clear explanation. Resistance is negative identification. Now, the exciting part. To me, one day you will understand that something is working overtime to try to liberate you. You won't think about it in spite of all the crud that you do and almost said a bad word that started with a C, all of the things that you do every single day that are part and parcel with ensuring that this punishing nature remains holding you. In spite of all that, you are always being given opportunities to see where it is that you have mistaken in a time to come freedom from the freedom that you are being given in that moment from that time nature. Just like that. You'll see it. And in that moment, you won't be reaching anymore for what that nature always reaches for. So, all right, resistance is what? Negative. If resistance is negative, if resistance is negative identification, can you make the leap to understand that that means resistance is the same as negative attraction? If resistance is negative identification, it means that resistance is negative attraction. Now, we can stretch this idea of negative identification because we can see, well, it's true. I say, I don't want to revisit my past and all my time spent there wishing I wasn't there. I'm identified somehow or other with something in the past that as I'm pained by it, something in me going, no, I don't want that, and yet all of my attention's right there. Why is all of my attention there? Because resistance is negative attraction. Now, you still with me? How can I be attracted to what I claim I don't want? This isn't a mind game. I'm just bringing things down for you to see them in the flesh, as it were. How can I be attracted to the very moment that I say I never want to go through that again? How's that possible? And yet, first of all, can you see that that is in fact the case? Even though you say, no, it's not. If I'm still struggling with a negative reaction about something I don't want, clearly I'm somehow or other identified with that. And what is it about this negative identification that is this strange, what's a good word for it? This strange attraction. And it is a strange attraction, isn't it? It's a good title for a book. Yeah, I know. Another no seller. It's all right. I'm not easily discouraged. Hidden within every negative reaction to resistance. And what is resistance other than some desire has been threatened or otherwise spoiled? Yes or no? Hidden within every single negative reaction is another desire. Hidden in every negative reaction is another desire. The reaction is to the desire being thwarted, isn't it? So here I am, the desire has been thwarted. I'm full of resistance, negative reactions. They're telling me, go here, do this, fix them. And unbeknownst, because I say I don't want to be doing that, I want to get free of it, unbeknownst to it, I am cooperating with that consciousness because I don't understand that in the very reaction of not wanting that moment, not wanting that experience, hidden in that is the desire for an experience that isn't the one I'm in. Please, isn't that what's going on? I'm with people and they say something and I'm chica and I'm rushing, I'm going someplace and I go, God, I wish I wasn't rushing. I need to slow down. And then I talk to myself about it. And then I say, you need to slow down. And then I'm going to slow down. And I maybe accomplish it by an act of discipline, but it doesn't change anything in my consciousness because I haven't been burned by my unconscious relationship that I don't yet see with that level of myself. I haven't felt that. I don't understand it yet. That's what this work is about. is opening the doors of perception so that we can start to see into this interior nature that we're sound asleep in, that has power over us because we don't understand anything about it. So, yes or no, in that negative reaction, there is always a new demand. Doesn't every negative reaction contain? It's unspoken for the most part. It hasn't really fashioned itself yet. But in every negative reaction, there is, first of all, you can't have a negative reaction without a demand that was thwarted, can you? So when the demand is thwarted, what's my solution to that demand being thwarted? Another demand. You're this way, you're going to be that way. They did this, one day they won't. I'm like this, but I shouldn't be. And I'm going to fix that. Yes or no? So that there's always some unseen desire, its appropriate demand, as it were, to those moments. And that demand, that desire is to do what? What does that desire do? This is important. First, that desire that I don't see, do you get this? I don't see it. My desire was, you crushed it. The moment it's crushed, something in me wants to bring it back to life in another form, in another time, or otherwise console me, which is also a desire. So all of that action of strengthening, of consoling, of all the considerations of trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together, what is it really putting back together in that moment? What is it really putting back together? Is it putting you back together in that moment? Or is that consciousness putting itself back together again? Because it was momentarily thwarted, it felt the pain of its own reaction, and then it wants to free itself from its own painful reaction, listen to this, by another desire. When the root of its pain was because it was identified with an initial unseen demand or desire. Are you starting to see this loop? So hidden in that negative reaction is always what is imagined as what will rescue me from the experience of identifying with my reaction. Did it sink in? I'm trying to think to myself, here I am. I have this negative reaction. I don't want to be here. I don't want to go through this. And then hidden in it is something going, you're right. You shouldn't be here. Here's what you should do. Here's what you should be. And so I'm picked up by another reaction that tells me what I need to do to free myself from the first reaction. Please, the second reaction is telling me what to do to escape the pain of the first reaction. And because the second reaction is obviously nonsense and has no power whatsoever, that second reaction then starts to do what? It starts giving me actions to take. And then I start taking those actions. Do this, go there, fix that, discipline, eat, do all of these things. And everything that I do, does it work? No. And as it doesn't work, what do I experience? Another reaction. And before I know it, and this is under the law of 7 in a certain way, before I know it, I have made a full circle. I've gone round, completely around, back to the consciousness that started the whole cycle with a resistance and a demand and a reaction that it had no idea that it was giving rise to, let alone that it could be released by its own reaction. Please? The unseen desire born of an imagined solution is inseparable from our unconscious identification with it. Inseparable from it. And as strange as that may be, and just to summarize this first part, I look to my reaction to save me from my reaction. Now, if you've been following, you might finally at least have a little glimpse and say, well, holy cow, that can't really work, can it? Can it? In other words, very much like, how many of you know the Trojan horse? They snuck inside of Troy and they sacked the city because the people in Troy thought they were being given a gift to help them worship Apollo, I think it was. I'm not sure if that was, or Diana, whatever it was. So they snuck inside the big wooden horse, and the Trojans wheeled that big horse right into the center of their city, and hidden inside were, whatever it was, 20 Greeks who did what? Took a ladder down, opened the gates, sacked the city. That is exactly what negative reactions are. They're Trojan horses. Exactly what a negative reaction is. It says, I'll ask you this, what's the one thing that you've never in your whole life heard a negative reaction, that you never hear a negative reaction say as it appears to wreck the moment? The one thing you never hear a negative reaction say. I come bearing gifts. Did you ever hear a negative reaction say that? I come bearing gifts. No. What it says is, I come to rescue you from something that has taken the gift you had the moment before. And hidden in that negative reaction is what? Let's go slow. Hidden in that negative reaction is what? I already told you, there's a desire. Do you understand that, the mechanics of that? I've explained that a few times, but just every time there is a disturbance of any nature whatsoever, it is because there is a disparity of some kind between what is present and acting onto what is passive and awaiting the action. There is a disparity between these two worlds. One is physical, one is spiritual, if you want to use those words. One is energy, the other's matter. It makes no difference. So when that moment comes and this active force works on what's passive, there is a disparity there. That's what we call the initial resistance, that disturbance. That initial disturbance, by its very nature, appears with a desire to reconcile these disparating forces. There is a built-in desire for reconciliation. Please? So in every one of these moments where there is some form of resistance and reaction, it is pre-sown by design, divine design, to come forth with a desire to bring about the reconciliation between these seemingly disparate conditions that I'm in. That desire is hidden. It is divine in its origin, but it becomes very human as it sinks into this consciousness that then comes up with and cannot see. The minute I'm disturbed, I have a desire not to be disturbed. The moment I have a desire not to be disturbed, I know what I need to do to not be disturbed. The moment I know what to do to not be disturbed, I have to look to the past to tell me what it is that will free me, because I don't know what else to look to, including the future I imagine, which is the reconfigured past. So in that moment, without knowing it, I'm literally turned around in the wrong direction. You know, we've been talking about make a U-turn and all that business. I'm literally turned around in the wrong direction, and the only thing I can see in that moment is what is promising me that there will come an end to this negative reaction when I finally rise above the conditions responsible for it. Because I blame the conditions for my experience of the moment. The conditions are not responsible for my experience of the moment. The conditions are revealing the consciousness that can only experience it like that in the moment. That's all it can do. And why is that all it can do? Because that's all it's ever done. It makes these big circles. Bring up the second key lesson, please. This is important, and I put them up here so you can write them down, and I would if I were you. No reaction can resolve the moment it sees, let alone blames, for what amounts to not wanting the experience of itself. No reaction can resolve the moment it sees, let alone blames, for what amounts to not wanting the experience of itself. Don't your reactions have hidden in them the promise, if you take the actions they suggest, you will resolve the unwanted experience you're in. The unwanted experience is your identification with that consciousness and its resistance to the moment. That's the actual unwanted experience. Am I going too fast? Nice deep breath. What am I fighting with in these moments when unwanted events come up? What am I fighting? Am I struggling? What am I struggling with in those moments? That, by the way, we've seen is impossible and futile, but let's keep going. What am I struggling to do? Here I am, reaction, rushing, chica, rush. What am I actually struggling with in that moment? Well, somebody said it, but I don't know how much they understand it. What I'm actually struggling with is what? My own reaction. It says, no, you're struggling with this condition. Yes or no? Isn't that what it says? Does the condition exist apart from the reaction to it? Does the condition I don't want exist without my resistance to that moment? Does it? If a tree falls in the woods, no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? We understand that's a koan. It's saying there's this mutual dependency. There is an unseen mutual dependency between this moment that I'm reacting to and the consciousness that's reacting to it. They are not separate the way the reaction tells us. Reactions tell you that you are other than the condition you're reacting to. Negative reactions tell you that you are other than the condition you're reacting to. And you are not other than the condition you're reacting to. That consciousness is the reflection of that moment, and then it resists its own conclusions. Please? I have at home, you know, I talk about the animals. There's one turkey who really deserves the name Turkey. Because it'll walk up in front of my sliding glass door, in part because it likes to look, it actually jumps on this bench and it goes looking inside. And it'll come and it'll get to the sliding glass door, and then it'll see itself in the reflection. Do you know what that turkey does when it sees itself? And it starts pecking at the door. First I thought it was knocking to get in, but it's so stupid it doesn't recognize itself. Don't take offense now. But what would you call somebody who believes that their reaction to an unwanted moment proves the moment to be outside of themselves and that they have to fight with it? What am I looking at? I'm looking at a reflection of my own consciousness as it rises up and goes, no, no, no. Yes or no? So you can never be insulted if someone calls you a turkey again. Bada bang. How can the end of our suffering bring an end to itself? How can the source of our suffering, which is what? Not just identifying with the reactions, but then further being attached to and attracted to the promise the reaction gives us that in the time to come will be proven free. How can the source of that suffering ever bring an end to itself? Can it? Come on. Can the source of that kind of suffering, resistance, unconscious, negative reactions, can that bring an end to itself? It's impossible. Which means what? Let's bring up third key lesson. I'd really write this down. It's impossible to free myself from any negative reaction by identifying with another reaction of any kind. It is impossible to free myself from any negative reaction by identifying with another reaction of any kind. Isn't that what a reaction brings up? Out of that reaction comes what? Here's what you must do. So the reaction gives rise to, listen, what seems to be an action separate from the reaction giving life to it. The reaction gives rise to, here's a new action, Guy. Do this. But is the new action, in quotes, suggested by my reaction, is it a new action or is it simply another reaction, the repeat of an action I've taken in 10,000 different ways before, so that the reaction is giving me a reaction to free myself from the experience of my own reactions? One day inwardly you'll wear a big smile on your face as you see the truth of all of this. And you know why you'll wear that big smile? Because you'll see the futility of trying to escape yourself by your reactions and all of the thinking that's involved. What do you think you're thinking about all the time? You know you're always thinking, right? What do you think you're always thinking about? This mind going on and on and on. What do you think you're doing? It's trying to solve the conflict inherent in having a reaction to your own reaction. It's saying, here's what you need. Let's think this through. Let's kind of work this out. We look at this. We'll put it up here, get it on a board, spread it out. And then when all of that's said and done, I'll be free. Except there's one big problem with that plan. What's the one big problem with the plan? Out loud, please. It doesn't work. Now, are we in some form of concert here about this idea that it doesn't work? Because if we are, then I can go on with the class. Hidden, just like we can see, ideally now, can we not, that in this negative reaction, though I've never seen it before, every negative reaction is a Trojan horse, yes? And that it hides a desire or a demand of some kind. And that desire or that demand of some kind in the reaction is itself a reaction of that consciousness trying to escape its own conclusion that brought up the initial reaction. Also hidden in that reaction is a new level of understanding. The possibility of it anyway. Another order of awareness that as we learn to use these reactions properly, begins to bring us into a place where by our awareness of our relationship to these reactions allows us to step out of them and walk away from them, which is the topic of our class today. Would you like to be free of your negative reactions? See, now you say you want to be free of them, but you're slightly suspect. Do you understand why I'm suspicious? Bring up the fourth key lesson, please. This is how you do it. This is how you do it. You ready? Read with me. No reaction is a choice, and neither is any choice made from a reaction capable of changing the unconscious nature that gives rise to it. Now repeat after me. A reaction is not a choice.
A reaction is not a choice.
Doesn't it seem to you that your reaction holds choices in it? Isn't that the source of your choices in the moment? Yes or no? But if we've done anything over the last 48 minutes, it should be to help you begin to suspect that no choice that I've ever made from a reaction has freed me from the consciousness that ceaselessly resists and reacts. Not one choice. I can kick the can down the road. I'm pretty good at can kicking. I can postpone this. I can learn how to keep a stiff upper lip. But I sit at home and I hear the news. I see these people. I talk to them. I get these emails. My mind, what do you think your mind is doing when you don't know what else to do with yourself other than looking for something to think about and react to? That's what it does. It looks for something it can give its attention to, and then the minute it gives its attention to the thing that it does, it goes, oh no. What do I do about that? How do I handle this? And then you've got your meat for the whole week. Do you see that? No reaction is a choice. Okay, let's stop for a second. What if I knew that? How many of you suspect? How many of you are having lots of reactions right now? What if I'm sitting at home and a thought comes? I'm with somebody and they say something. You know what conversations are between human beings? They are reactions validating the reactor. That's what conversations are between human beings at our level. They are reactions validating the reactor, then the reactor validating the one that reacted. This give and take of nonsense all predicated on the idea that this was bothering me. And so first of all, I need to really tell you what's bothering me. I got to get you into it. And the reason I need to get you into it is the more you get into it, and it really doesn't matter whether you like or don't like what I'm getting into. All that matters is that you'll have a reaction. And then when you have that reaction, it'll create second force, and then I'll have a reaction, and we'll get married. Because that's what happens. And we don't see it. And what's the harm in all this? The world kind of seems to be going along, not very well, but it's chugging downhill, but it's not it's on a pretty steep grade right now. What's the real harm in all of this? What's the real harm in all of this? All of that energy that exists in that moment when there is this essential resistance. In the moment of the essential resistance is created another worldly energy. And all of that energy is required if that man or woman ever wants to be able to look at these moments where these reactions are taking place and then realize there is only one place to be in any moment of this resistance and negative reaction. Can you see, please? Here's the negative reaction. Here I am. So that there's always that which is passive, me who got acted on, and then there's always this thing that is acting on me. And these active and passive forces always are separate, aren't they? Separated by this reaction that says this condition has nothing to do with the consciousness that's reflecting it. But the fact of the matter is that in that same moment, and this is what I'm alluding to in the upcoming talks, in that same moment of this active and passive force, in that same moment, there is an immensity of energy available when, instead of identifying with the reaction or the one suffering, I sit and I see those two things at the same time, poised above them, in the field of energy they have created. In the field of energy they have created that I know nothing about because my energy is derived from resistance or attraction, and that's it. Oh, what awaits the human being who awakens. A completely different world. Completely different way of meeting these moments where, and all of this talk is designed to do what? What does that key lesson say? No reaction is a choice. So what happens when you have your next reaction? What happens if you know that? Look, I know you don't know it yet. I know you don't know it. You can't because you don't see it yet. But you know the truth of it to some extent. That's why we have talks, yeah? So there's some awareness of this. You know what? A reaction can't resolve a reaction. No reaction can settle itself, let alone rescue me. Can a negative reaction rescue me from a negative reaction? No. It can't. It's not a choice. Oh, wait a minute. If it's not a choice, who's making it? If it's not a choice, who's making the choice? Because something is, isn't it? So suddenly I get a little glimpse of this. And it's not a big glimpse. This doesn't happen like that. Believe me, you have to be prepared. And I mean that in every sense of the word. The energy that gradually isn't wasted accumulates. You can't put new wine into old skins. All of that, as it accrues, as it's intended to, feeds another aspect of this nature that binds, brings together, and reveals unified all of your parts. In that energy, a person starts to realize, you know what? Bit by bit, here I am, and I'm sitting at home, I'm starting to have a negative reaction. Now, what happens if I have a negative reaction? I'm attracted to it, aren't I? Please, I proved that to you. You say, no, I don't want it. Well, if you don't want it, don't have it. I can't not have it. Why? I'm attracted to it. Why am I attracted to it? Because it got a little desire hidden in there. Got something going to save me, going to clearly identify me as the one who that has been done against, and now I know what to do and all the rest of that. So now I know, wait a minute, no reaction can save me from my reaction. No promise of a better tomorrow can free me from the fear of today. No hope that someone's going to change can help me escape the ceaseless judgment that I make of them. None of that exists. And if I actually realize that, where does that leave me in the moment of that reaction? If I actually understand this, where does it leave me? It leaves me in a place where there's no choice, not by my consciousness, but by my awareness. That reaction is momentarily negated. I didn't negate it. I'm the one that wants to run with it. I'm the one identified with its pain and its promise. But in the moment where I actually understand, wait a minute, I'm having this reaction again. How many times am I going to react in fear? How many times? And there's the reaction. But now, instead of running like the bulls, I realize I can't run with this reaction. I can't run with it. And when I can't run with it, what happens to that reaction? Here's all, you understand that there is a tremendous amount of energy, even in a mechanical reaction. Tremendous amount of energy. Here's this tremendous amount of energy that usually picks me up and then deposits me wherever it does. And here's all that energy, and for a split second, something in me goes, I doubt it. What do you think happens to all that energy?
It burns itself out.
For the first time, instead of running with the resistance, you are using the awareness of that resistance to reveal the machinery responsible for creating it. Like that. So that in that moment of pause, where, you know, God, I'm so afraid of, what if I gotta, you know, and you're sitting there, but even that, You've stepped outside of the stream of that mechanical consciousness that delivers you over and over again to the waterfall. And in stepping into that stream, actually not out, stepping into it, for the first time you can feel all of it. You're aware of everything moving into and through you in that moment. You're not identified with it now, you're the observer of it. And that's where your hope lies. In beginning to understand that there is always in every situation this initial of not wanting. I don't want this to happen. I don't want to be afraid. I don't want them to be like this. I don't want the world to do that. I don't want to. And I can't have an I don't want to. Oh, I should have saved that for a talk. I like that. How many of you have a I don't want a pet? It's my pet, I don't want to. I love that. I might use it anyway. How many of you have a pet called I don't want to? Now, can you feed I don't want to without it growing? Or as you feed I don't want to, does it get into a bigger wanna? I don't. It grows, doesn't it? So if I actually understand the more I don't want to, the more I don't want to, what do I have to do when I want to? I have to observe. I have to see what in the name of God in me wants to keep doing and repeating the condition that as I do it, that promises me that'll bring an end to it. It just recreates it. I'm going to have to do something I've never done before. And that's where your work will lead you. Not this, not that. Not this, not that. Not the resistance and not the reaction. Not the solution the reaction gives, and certainly not the identification with that consciousness. Negation. That's what happens when you burn your hand on a candle. There is an instantaneous negation produced by an impression that can never go away to that consciousness because it has learned its lesson. When you learn the lesson hidden in these negative reactions, you will begin to step out of and away from this habitual identification with them, and gradually the clarification you need to be free. Let's take a break. We'll come back and have our dialogue.
Our discussion time with Guy. So now is when you can, if you're on GoToWebinar, raise your hand, and that puts you in the queue. If you wish to speak with Guy or ask him a question, when your turn comes, I will unmute you, and then you can unmute on your end. Just look for that little hand icon. You can click or tap at once. If you are on Facebook or YouTube, you can just send a note in the chat area of those places, and I cycle around and I try to grab them as best I can so that we have time to read them to Guy. Before we get started here, I just have two quick announcements. If you are not on our newsletter list, on our email list, I would recommend that you do get on there. You will get announcements about events and specials, and most importantly, every week you get a key lesson email, which is a nice email that has a quote of the week, and then some expanded material talking more about that, and just gives you all the sorts of information about what's going on at the foundation, etc. So if you're not on the newsletter list, you can simply go to guyfinley.org/newsletter, and that will redirect you to a page where you can sign up. And what was I going to say about that? Now I can't remember. Oh, well, that's what you want to do. The second announcement is, if you are not familiar with Life of Learning Foundation, we are a nonprofit organization located here in Southern Oregon. We actually have a building here where we have these classes that Guy gives each week, and we have students who come and attend the classes, and you're welcome to join in, visit us here anytime. And we also, as you know, we live stream our classes, all of our classes out into the world for free. And so if you would like to help us with our mission, you know, what we're doing here at the foundation and trying to get these healing and helpful ideas out into the world, please consider making a donation. You can go to guyfinley.org/donate, and that takes you to the page on our website where you can make a one-time donation or become a monthly donor. All of that is helpful to us, and all of the work goes, all of the funds go right back into helping this work and what we're trying to do. Every purchase you make in the store also supports the work, or becoming a Wisdom School member. So all of that is helpful to us, and we appreciate your support. And for those of you who have been supporting us, thank you for doing that. And just a quick note that all donations are tax deductible in the US. Let's get started with our Q&A. So we'll bring Guy back on. And Guy, is there anything you want to start with before we jump into the Q&A?
I have a spook over here.
I guess that means someone's at the mic.
No, we can't. I don't know whether it makes a difference, but for some reason, one of these lights won't go on, but I think I look okay. As far as lighting goes, I don't know about the rest. No, Kate, nothing. I got nothing.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought you were saying someone is up at the mic who wanted to speak.
No.
All right. Okie dokie. Fair enough. So I have two. How many? Two written questions, Guy. We'll go ahead and start with that, and just to kick things off. And a reminder to the folks online, you can raise your hand to talk with Guy if you wish. But let's get things going with this leftover question that came in from Carl, and I'm just sending it to you now, Guy. Are you there?
No. No button that
All right, I'm going to read it anyway.
Okay.
Here we go. Carl says, my mind lately has just been on loop over and over again, telling me how empty my life is. I have no friends, and it's fixated on trying to have friends, which is making me unbelievably miserable, because obviously desire is a coin with two faces. Hope you can help like you always do. Thank you, Carl.
Can you all see, and I hope Carl's joined us, and if not, maybe he's listening to it and then he can pick up the answer here. Can you all see from what we looked at together in this meeting, the intelligence, including the difficulty of it, of understanding there is really nothing to do but only something to see. Seeing, equating trying to rescue me from the condition, but are actually bringing about a deeper and deeper identification with the consciousness responsible for that experience. So if that's true, and it is, and I'm Carl and I have my mind telling me over and over again of how empty my life is. By the way, does anybody ever hear that voice? Just want Carl to know he's not alone. And I resist those moments. What am I actually doing? Am I not filling myself with the very thing, the experience I don't want? Am I not? Do you remember I told you there has to come a point in your spiritual work where you become ruthless? Where it's not just principle, but it becomes practice? If you remain identified with principle, you will be a prisoner of your own constant negative reactions to your inadequacy, measured by the idea of who and what you should be because of the knowledge you have. The real spiritual work is never a step into the known, ever, ever, ever. And isn't every reaction pointing to what is known and then what you need to do that is known in order to escape it? Yes or no? Yes. This is why you make circles. You don't have to think of yourself as being some kind of spiritual warrior who's just going to venture into the unknown. That's all nonsense. But you can begin to recognize when those moments come, when you see that, no reaction is going to rescue me from this reaction. And if it's not going to rescue me, what am I left with? Anybody? I'm left with the unknown. I'm left with an empty space that I cannot fill anymore, not because I'm not tempted to do so, but because I realize that every time I fill that empty space with what I know, all I'm creating is the next empty moment in my life when what I know proves futile. We want an easy solution to our suffering. Don't you? I want to drive through and get a Happy Meal. You can learn, Carl, to use this suffering instead of letting it continue to use you every time a certain set of conditions triggers the idea of how alone you are. And I might add, Carl, and for everybody else, because you're not alone. I know there's people in this very room who spend a lot of time thinking about how alone they are. Why do other people get to do things that they don't get to do? Why do people have friends? How come I'm like this? How come? When we wallow in any form of self-pity, not only is it born out of something that we don't understand, that we're attracted to because of how firmly it establishes the sense of myself as someone who is alone. Not only does it strengthen, please try, you see, you have to see it. I don't mind explaining it in every possible way. That's what I do. But the more time I spend wallowing, thinking about why am I so alone, the more alone I am. And not only the more alone I am, but the more I'm isolated from any possible recognition that that reaction is receding itself, and I'm growing into the very thing I say I don't want to be. And if I catch a glimpse of that, change can start. So, Carl, the next time you find yourself in the loop, see with as much clarity as you can that there's not one thing in that loop that's going to rescue you from your loneliness. that it's strengthening the identification with it. And as best you can, simply, I have to give a whole talk on this. It's a word that I don't want to use too much because of its association with old work. You have to come to a stop. You have to come to a stop. And that's the last thing that any reaction or the consciousness responsible for it wants to do. Because if you come to a stop, you're going to feel everything that's been moving you along. And that's where your hope lies. Over to you, Kate.
All right. No hands up in the queue at the moment. And I do have one more written question, but now's a good time for you to raise your hands if you like. Oh, there's one that popped up. That's good. So I'm going to send you this question, Guy. And just so everyone knows, we have about 15 minutes for our Q&A, so plenty of time. Here's a question that came in from Mary. Hello, Guy. You mentioned that a moment of disturbance provides a lesson if we sit through that storm and see the revelation. You also mention the observer is the observed. And you also mention as above, so below, and that God makes a feast in the presence of one's enemies. If you could go through a specific example to make these concepts more understood and how they all relate to each other to provide a final revelation. Thank you.
Okay. Mary, do you ever go to a restaurant hungry, read the menu, and go, I feel much better, and then go home? Would that make sense to anybody? Why not? Because the word stuffed potato is not a stuffed potato. Neither is the description of a stuffed potato the satisfaction of that cheesy goodness. I'm hallucinating. There's no final revelation, Mary. And you know why there's no final revelation, Mary and everybody else? Do you know why there's no final revelation? Because there's no self apart from revelation. That's why. Every bit of your pain, every demand, every desire is a product of believing that you are somehow apart from the life that you're experiencing. So the real revelation is the ceaseless entrance into an experience of yourself as part of the moment of creation, wherein you are dying and being reborn, given a new form, and going through the same thing endlessly in one constant stream. That's what eternity is. You want to be someone who enters into eternity, and because of that, you live in a perpetual purgatory. Because your endless eternity is born of your desires and your ideas of what it'll be like to be free and safe and whole. And the very attempt to be free and safe and whole is produced by a mind that thinks it's not, and believes itself to be the subject of every unwanted condition, and then uses its reaction to that. It uses that reaction to it to produce a new reality in which in time I will become free. Seeing that, Mary, is the revelation. And it's not happening in these individual instances. It's happening in every moment of our life. Do you know that there may not be many of them, but I know there's a few men and women around this world, and maybe you are one of those people from time to time. They're sitting someplace maybe in their little home, or they're in their car, or they're sitting at their office. And they've been interested and maybe aspiring to have a different order of life. And for a split second, they catch the fear again. And they catch the reaction to it, and they catch the temptation that comes with the fear. And the temptation is always in the desire, right in the heart of that reaction, to save oneself from what they are reacting to. And in that moment, that man or woman, to whatever extent they can, they lay their life down. And in that moment, they change the whole world. In that moment, they change the whole world. And I might add that when that takes place, the man or woman who's doing that has no idea that they've done it. They're not concerned with anything other than being as fully present to the moment as the moment affords them to be. Because they understand if they're not fully present, then they are being pushed and pulled along. It's in the most common things, really, that the highest acts of the divine are made evident. We just don't see it. One moment of suffering your own impatience is more valuable than 10,000 years of studying about patience. One moment of it. One moment of recognizing that reaction is not going to release me, and in spite of the pain that I'm in, I'm not going to identify with the direction it's giving me. That one moment is more valuable than traveling around the world and sitting at the feet of 10,000 gurus. That one moment. You know why? Because in that one moment, because of your work, you see the truth of yourself and that moment at the same time. And the moment and yourself and the truth are synonymous. They are a singularity. They are a singularity. Who is my enemy? Mary said, he prepareth a feast in the presence of my enemy. Who's my enemy? Who's my enemy? You must be careful. Because if in fact it is possible for me to see that the reaction that's pointing to someone as being the enemy is itself an expression of a consciousness that can't live without one, then in that moment the awareness of that entire consciousness has no enemy in it, and yet there is a feast prepared right in that moment where everything that was a problem to me is now what is lifting me above that consciousness. So it's all things working for the good of God, and it is. All things. On we go, Kate, if there's any more place to go. Patricia's coming up to the mic.
All right, we can go to Patricia, but I do have 3 hands up and a written question.
Okay.
My name is Patricia. Guy said tonight in the talk, what we resist, how did you say it? What we resist, we love the reaction to what we resist. I said I resist political news, which I do. You know, I could think back in my life at several occasions where something happened and I was so torn up about it. And they were things that anybody would have been torn up. I mean, they were big events in my life. And one time I could remember thinking, this may be hell, but at least I feel alive. Now, I didn't say that. I heard that voice.
Right.
But at least I feel alive. And that's the same thing when people are ranting about politics or whatever they're ranting about. They're just giving themselves a feeling of being alive to fill the emptiness. And I could actually remember, especially as a teenager, because you're very emotional as a teenager, and I'd be upset about something. I could actually spin off and watch myself act. Do you remember? I mean, have other people say that you're playing the role of being upset, and your parents are upset that because you're upset, and it was an act.
Right. So. One thing, Kate, before we go on, because I can't say it enough, and I will find better and better ways to express it. You are, for all intents and purposes, you are a citizen of 2 kingdoms. two kingdoms. I'm a human being in a body on a planet that's falling apart. A world who's never had more violence in it, more hatred, more destruction hidden in the name of ambition or whatever it is that the corporations tell human beings they're doing. Never have we been, has there been such a proliferation of liars in high positions? Ever. It's been going all along. I mean, you can go back and you can see it. You look at the greatest destruction ever done on this planet was done in the name of love. You can see it if you look. But now it's becoming evident and more evident. So I'm in this world. I can't just turn a blind eye to it. And yet I mustn't be blinded by it at the same time. So there's a place somewhere between those opposites, isn't there? That's what I'm getting at. That's where a man or a woman must get to if they're ever going to take the action that exists in that place where they're not giving themselves the action to take to save themselves from one opposite or the other. They are themselves a solution in a body, listen, as given to them as a spiritual person. Because I am a human being in a body having a very human experience, but I am also a soul, at least a possibility of one. And that soul lives in a different world than this body does, and yet, and properly understood, the soul isn't in the body's in the soul. I know you don't understand, but that's the fact. This soul is not in the body's in the soul. And that soul is not only an individual, but it is a universal, a collective, the Adamic nature. It is a singularity, and it is intended to pay off its karmic debt. It is intended to see what it has done and been over time, and it is responsible for what it has been and done over time, not just individually, but collectively. So there's all of that going on. Now you deal with it. I'm serious, see, that's what you think. I got to deal with it. No, you don't. The revelation of the reality and your relationship to that revelation places you exactly every single moment where you need to be doing the only thing that you can do that reconciles the entirety. Over to you, Kate.
All right, we're going to go to Neil.
I wondering where discipline comes into play here. During your talk, you said it's about keeping a stiff upper lip, and you kind of made it sound like that's not the right direction for resistance. You know, like I try to be disciplined in my thought that I'm not going to feel a certain way, and then of course,
right,
that to me is self-defeating. That I need to think about disciplining myself in a different area of your teachings, and maybe the consciousness, becoming conscious, is more an area to being disciplined rather than trying to say, I'm going to white knuckle my way through this and not feel this way. I'm not going to have this reaction.
I got it. I understand completely. I like the question, Neil, because I like the fact that you're struggling to understand it. There are certain advantages to discipline, but you must weigh those advantages with the fact that wherever a man or a woman is trying to discipline themselves, meaning discipline their character, they're full of conflict. You wouldn't be trying to discipline yourself if you weren't trying not to be what you are. So discipline connotes conflict. Why do you think people go on these diets, kill themselves, and then within 6 months or a year, it's all gone to hell in a handbasket? Because they disciplined themselves long enough to achieve what was desired. And as soon as it was desired, then the desire resurfaces, and they're back to trying to discipline themselves again. To me, that's hell. Do you need to discipline yourself not to put your hand in the fire? Do you or don't you? Why do I need to discipline myself not to hurt myself? Why do I need to discipline myself not to be self-destructive? Do you understand the nature of the questions that you need to ask yourself? Why do I need to discipline myself to stop rushing? Am I not in conflict? Something in me, go, 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 go. Yeah? Something else, no, 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 no. Ah! And I don't know who's going to win that day. And if the rusher wins, I hate myself. And if I win the battle with the rusher, I did it. Until 2 minutes later. Because the consciousness was never touched. There's no easy answer, Neil, but if you will begin to observe, and you're suspicious of it now, that there is no conflict that will ever bring an end to conflict. That means that my consciousness, as long as it's struggling not to be something, is actually ensuring that what I don't want to be goes on. It's built into it. You see it, you'll begin to understand it. Doesn't mean that and this is the problem, because everybody, see, well, you're saying I should just, no, I'm not saying anything. I'm showing you some things for you to look at. You can't discipline the mind into being quiet. You can't discipline temptation. You can postpone it. You can argue with it. You can bury it. But what happens to any condition in the consciousness that's buried is that it goes underground, finds some other way to express itself, and then resurfaces in something else, as you should well know. Katie, what do we got left? Because I'm kind of going on too long.
I have this question that that came in from Stanislav that I'd like to read, and we also have Namita with her hand up.
Okay.
All right, so here's the question. I just sent it to you. Stanislav says, "Hello, Guy. Over the past couple of years, I've been trying to reach the core of myself so that something would push me, and I finally realized that I found myself rather than just being a pinball bouncing off of everyone else and their reactions and so on. My exercise might seem strange to someone, but I'm revisiting my childhood interests and recalling the cartoons I watched as a child until traumatic moments happened and left me in a state of helplessness and dependence on others. I'm watching this cartoon series from beginning to end, being a 30-year-old, and when I finish the last episode, I never go back to that moment, feeling a surge of confidence, self-victory, and a sense of accomplishment. So, Guy, in your opinion, is it possible that I am deceiving myself and that such a path will not lead me to my true center?"
I'm trying to get the gist of the question, Stanislav. You know that you are deceiving yourself. If you weren't, you wouldn't feel the need to ask the question. With patience and persistence, and you must prove this to yourself. I can't. I can show you, but with patience and persistence, you can understand the real moment in your life where things change is never felt as an accomplishment, ever. Any accomplishment that you identify with, you will become the rabid defender of. Believe me, and if you've ever played sports, for the longest time you struggle with a certain aspect of it, and then suddenly you see something and you feel like you're reborn, which in one respect you are, because suddenly you have a new understanding that you didn't have before. But if you think to yourself, now I've got it, now I understand, you're dead in the water. Because whoever it was that was there that moment with that revelation, they don't show up the next day. because it's still broken up inside of us. We don't have an individual I. We are a legion, a collection of different I's, each one dependent on the conditions that bring it up in that moment. To use words, the real victory is when I see to some extent and am willing to practice the fact that there's no one there by my name trying to overcome something. What do you try to overcome every day? Please, what do you try to overcome every day? No, it's not the condition, it's your reaction. I'm trying to overcome my reaction to that condition. I say I'm trying to overcome that condition because it's punishing me. No, it's not the condition that's punishing you. It's your identification with the resistance to it. That's what's punishing you. Do you see it? So who's there to overcome? Who am I going to overcome? That goes back to the question before this. Who am I going to overcome? Trying to overcome myself is conflict, isn't it? And then you say, well, if I don't try to overcome myself, I'm going to become a fat, lazy, ignorant slob of some kind. What is life making all of us? Just because I happen to have a handsome body, if I do, or my body's trim, or I drive a nice car. What is life making of me other than a man or woman who never stops looking out at the world, trying to figure out what it means to me in that moment and what I have to do if I want to be safe? And when you've got 6.5 billion people doing that, you have hatred, war, and violence. Ambition masking itself off as compassion. No. It is very palpable when you are set against yourself. You just don't know it yet. You just don't know it yet. And the clearer it becomes that no reaction can rescue you from a reaction, the more willing you're going to be to step into that unknown moment where I'm not going to save myself. I can't. Even though I don't know what else to do, I will, not my will, but thy will be done. And then you'll see something. It's inevitable. But you won't be seeing everything that you always saw before because it won't be you in the same moment standing there observing the situation. That's probably enough. Good night.